Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Terry Cunningham, the president of IACP. It's an honor for me to be here this afternoon and to introduce someone who needs no introduction whatsoever. And apparently there's a height requirement this afternoon to be on the stage. But so last year, the director was kind enough to swear me in at the swearing-in ceremony on Tuesday when I became president of the IACP. I had no idea what was in store for me over the next 12 months. It's been an incredible ride. I've been through some very, very difficult times this year. It's been difficult for law enforcement for the last 18, 24 months, 36 months. And quite frankly, I don't think it's going to get a lot easier. But I'll tell you one thing, the FBI has never been a better partner to law enforcement in the 34 years that I've been on the job. Been the police chief for the last 17 years, and I can tell you honestly that the partnership between IACP and the FBI has never been stronger under Director Comey's term. I can also tell you that we have worked tirelessly with the FBI, through the FBI, shoulder to shoulder, on the transition from UCR to NIBRS, on data collection when it comes to use of force on police and against police, whether it's the encryption issue and the going dark issue. I can't tell you how many times we've been in touch with and contact with the director's technical people so that we could learn more about it, so then the IACP could actually go out and do a couple of congressional briefings on encryption going dark and what that means to the officers out there in the street, to the state and local officers, not just from a terrorism perspective, because I think folks get that. So I have to tell you, it's been an incredible relationship. I can't thank the director enough for his partnership, his leadership, and quite frankly, I think if you go back and you take a look at it, I think the director was ahead of his time. He gave quite a speech at Georgetown, and I think that kind of led up to some of the events that occurred after that, and I think that if you go back and reflect on that, the director was right. I think if you look at his comments from last October when he was here at the IACP conference, he made some, well, I didn't think they were controversial, but apparently they were controversial comments about the Ferguson effect, and quite frankly, as I've traveled around the country and talked to chiefs, a lot of folks don't want to talk about it, but has there been a reduction in officer-initiated contacts? Quite frankly, I think there has been, and I think we all know the reason why. So without further ado, thank you all for being here this afternoon. Director, thank you. Thank you for this past year. It's been an honor, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you for your leadership, not just of this organization, but of this entire country. It has been a very, very challenging year, but you have been the kind of leader we need in challenging times. So thank you all for giving me a few minutes to share some thoughts with you. And after I'm done yammering at you a little bit, I'd be happy to take some questions. But I want to start by telling you that one of the best things about my job is the opportunity to get to know the leadership of law enforcement in the United States. Over the last 3 years, I have had the good fortune to get to know a whole lot of you and your troops. Although I haven't walked in your shoes, I thought this afternoon it might be useful for me to offer you a perspective from where I am, which is in an organization that works in every one of your communities, that depends upon you, and that constantly learns from you. I have learned from you that this is a uniquely difficult time in American law enforcement. And I know unique is an often overused word, but enough of you have told me that you think this is the hardest time in your law enforcement career, and especially as law enforcement leaders, that I think unique is the appropriate word, and I suspect you agree with me. Your people are caught in difficult and dangerous riptides. Your officers, your deputies, your detectives, your agents face challenges that those who went before them could hardly imagine. There's water rushing in and water rushing out. They are standing where those unpredictable currents meet. They're being pulled in different directions. They're being pulled by the communities they serve. They're being pulled by their colleagues, by expectations, by their leaders, by the media. There is a very real chance of drowning in those currents. There is a need for leadership in the middle of those riptides. There's a need for people to stand tall, plant their feet, speak the truth, and calm the waters. So what kind of leaders are we looking for standing like that in the riptides? First of all, they are leaders who know their own people. They know they became cops and deputy sheriffs to do good, to help others, to serve their community, and to serve all the people who live there. Whatever race, nationality, religion, gender, sexual orientation they may be, your folks signed up to serve all the people all the time. And the leaders we need start with that knowledge. Second, the leaders we need know what good policing looks like. They know it because they've lived it. Up close, respectful, disciplined, firm, fair, lawful, and transparent law enforcement has always been the law enforcement that is best, even in the neighborhoods with the most significant crime problems. The leaders we need understand that a combination of kindness and toughness, humility and confidence, decency and determination has always been what produces the best results. Third, the leaders we need know their neighborhoods, especially those with the greatest need for police, and they know the people who live there. In particular, they know the history and journey of Black America. They know the hopes, the dreams, the disappointments, and the pain. They know the history of law enforcement's interaction with Black America because the Black people of America know it and remember it for reasons that make good sense. They also know that African Americans, like all Americans, want good policing because they know it is the path to prosperity and safety and happiness. Fourth, the leaders we need understand that our challenges today are multiplied by a narrative that is forming about American policing. It is a narrative that has formed in the absence of good information, in the absence of actual data, and it is this: biased police are killing Black men at epidemic rates. That is the narrative. It is a narrative driven by video images of real and gut-wrenching misconduct, by images of possible misconduct, by images of perceived misconduct. It's a narrative given force by the awesome power of human empathy. It's a narrative driven forward by the surprise and shock of civilians seeing how fast and complicated police activity can be. The leaders we need know that many good people, people of goodwill in this country, decent, caring people, believe with all their hearts that American law enforcement is using deadly force against Black people at epidemic levels. The leaders we need know that Americans believe that because those are the videos that they see over and over and over again. To these Americans, people of goodwill and good hearts, each video becomes further proof of an epidemic nationwide police brutality. People of goodwill are protesting, including here in San Diego, because they believe there's an epidemic of police violence against Black people. Of course, however good their hearts, however well-intentioned they may be, Americans actually have no idea whether the number of Black people or brown people or white people being shot by police is up, down, or sideways over the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. They have no idea whether Black people or brown people are more likely to be shot during encounters than white people are. There's actually some recent research by a Harvard economist focused on 10 major departments that analyzed over 1,000 shootings by police that showed the surprising result that lethal force was more likely to be used against white people, while non-lethal force was more likely to be used against Black people. But we really don't know well enough, anywhere near well enough, on a national basis. There were 10.7 million arrests in this country last year, and many times that number of police encounters with civilians. Out of those tens of millions of encounters, how many people were shot? What did they look like? What were the circumstances? Is deadly force use trending up or down? Where is it best? Where is it worst? Nobody knows. They have no idea of these things because we have no idea of these things. We simply don't know. As a country, we have not bothered to collect the data, to collect the information. And in the absence of information, we have anecdotes, we have videos, we have good people believing something terrible is happening in this country. In a nation of almost 1 million sworn law enforcement officers and tens of millions of police encounters every year, a small group of videos serves as proof of an epidemic. And that sense by good people that something terrible is being done by the police has real costs. The leaders we need know that that narrative helps make it hard for us to gain our footing. It makes it hard for us to help people because in the absence of information, the narrative dominates and it changes everything. The leaders we know, we need, know that we simply have to change that. And we simply must show ourselves and America what is true and accurate, whatever that is. We must have a national database about our use of deadly force, because only with accurate information can we all get better. The leaders we need also know that the narrative helps divide us, that it can keep good officers in their cars and good people in their houses and away from law enforcement. It can keep those two groups of people separated by a chasm of distrust and fear. The leaders we need know that our officers are human beings with families and obligations and hopes and dreams. They know our officers do not want to get famous or get dead. Our officers see the videos. They desperately do not want to be in one. They think about that all the time. And they also saw Dallas and Baton Rouge and Palm Springs, and they read every end-of-watch notification. They think about that all the time. They desperately do not want to leave their families behind, and their families desperately don't want to be left behind. The leaders we need worry that self-initiated police activity in our most violent cities is on the decline. Of course officers respond to calls. Of course they make arrests and comfort victims and interview witnesses. They still do their jobs. They still risk their lives because they are good people. But they are also people, and a good leader knows that. The leaders we need ask questions like this. Do my officers get out of their car at midnight to ask a group of kids standing on a street corner what their business is here? Do they stop a car with tinted windows that ran a stop sign in a high-crime neighborhood? Do they get out to pat down the known offender who's been standing on a known drug corner for an hour? Or, as so many chiefs have told me, do they first ask themselves, because they are people, could this get me famous or dead? And the answer to that question changes policing and it changes neighborhoods. The leaders we need see that. But they also see that that is only one side of the divide, of the chasm. Because on the other side of that chasm stand good people who saw something, who suspect something, or who know something. When homicides are up and clearance rates are down, the leaders we need think about the divide, about the chasm. If people don't trust the police, they are not going to offer the tips. They aren't going to whisper to the cop that they saw who just left 20 shell casings on a sidewalk in broad daylight, that they saw the up-close shooting, that they know where the gun ended up. Instead, they're going to stay inside, on their own side of the chasm, on their own side of the divide. More murders, more unsolved. And so into the chasm, into that gap of distrust, fall more dead young black men. In places like Chicago, we see what the chasm looks like and how much pain it causes. The leaders we need ache over this, they agonize over this, and they refuse to stop speaking about this. And so they keep talking until they're hoarse. They talk to their citizens, they talk to the media, they talk to their elected officials, and they talk most of all to their officers. They love them and support them and hold them accountable. They fight for the equipment and the training that they need. They make clear what is expected of them and also make clear that they will have their back if they police well, even if it ends badly, even if it ends in tragedy, as it sometimes does. And to their communities, those same leaders make clear that good policing is up close and firm but respectful, that policing is really, really hard, and sometimes bad things happen, but that those bad things will be met with transparency and sound judgment. That community leaders should support their officers because they are, after all, their officers, saving lives and creating spaces so good things can grow. And in all that talking, the leaders we need show both sides that they want and need the same policing, that is how the chasm will begin to close. That is how communities will find both peace and healing. So those are the kind of leaders we need. The good news? Those are the kind of leaders that we have in so many of our communities. I said the best thing about my job is I've gotten to know the leadership of law enforcement in this country. We have leaders like that all over this country. People who have planted their feet in the riptide, who care deeply about their officers and about their communities, and are working tirelessly to care for both and to calm both and to close the chasm. Thank you for being those kinds of leaders. We need you now more than ever. But as you work to close the chasm, as you work to close the divide, I believe we face another threat that derives from that narrative that policing is somehow violent and racist and unfair. It threatens the future of policing, so I think we have to talk about that as leaders as well. And it's summed up in a single question. Who would choose to do this work? Who would choose to do something decried as inherently racist? Who would choose to risk getting famous or getting dead? Why on earth would a talented person choose that life when they could choose a respectable profession? Those questions should haunt us as law enforcement leaders, because this country will be deeply, deeply sorry if great young talent, kids who want to help other people, choose some other way to serve. We need great teachers and nurses and social workers, but we also need great people of character and talent out there, standing on the line where the stakes are highest, where single mothers are trying to make a life for themselves, where old folks want to sit on the porch and enjoy life, where a kid needs a second chance, where there really are predators trying to kill innocent people. We need the talent there. And if quality people stop signing up, we may not notice it for a few years, but the day will come when this country will be deeply sorry that we failed to explain to great young people why they should choose law enforcement, that we failed to show them the true heart of law enforcement. There are bad cops. There are departments with troubled cultures. Unfortunately, people are flawed. In any large group of people, there are going to be bad ones. All professions want to find them and root them out. There are bad bankers, there are bad lawyers, there are bad software engineers. There are companies and firms with troubled cultures. But for law enforcement, the spotlight is brighter and the standards are higher, and that's the way it should be, because we have extraordinary power and an ability to do tremendous good with that power. The authority we are given by the people of the United States means we should be held to a higher standard. We accept that, and we will work hard to measure ourselves against those standards. And of course, the pressure on cops among all other professions is unique. There's no doubt that some cops come to see young men of color on their beat as perps because they've seen so many who have gone wrong. That's dumb and that's unjust, and we have to work to constantly resist it, to train it out, to root it out. And cops are only called to scenes of pain and conflict and hurt. And that can be warping. So we as leaders have to be conscious of that danger. We have to show the cops who work only the overnight that in that neighborhood are good people going to school and work, pushing strollers, sitting on park benches in the daylight, including good young men trying to make a life. But I really cannot give you an on the one hand, on the other hand kind of thing here, because the truth is this. Police officers are overwhelmingly good people. They are overwhelmingly people who took exhausting and dangerous jobs because they want to help people. They chose lives of service over self and lives of moral content because that's who they are. They want to stop bad guys from occupying the neighborhoods and squeezing out good people. They want to help old people off the floor into bed. They want to keep a young girl from a life on the street. Somebody once said, you make a living by what you get. You make a life by what you give. These cops don't make a great living, but they make a great life for themselves and for the people that they serve and protect. And as we work to close the chasm, We need to show the young people of America what it's like to choose service over self. We need to show them what American law enforcement is really like. Because if they know what we know, they will want to be part of it. And we especially need to show the people of America, especially people of color, and especially the black community, what we are really like. Because if they see what we see, the chasm will close. I saw the true heart of American law enforcement this June in Orlando, in a big church. I went down to have a private meeting with the first responders to the Pulse nightclub attack. No press, just a private gathering so I could thank these amazing people for their work. After I spoke, turned to the audience and asked if there were questions or comments or feedback. And in the sea of faces, a man in uniform stood up and he said his name. And then he said, "Sir, I'm Jewish." And that confused me, but he went on and said this, "I'm Jewish. I was one of the first there that night. And as I ran toward the sound of gunfire, at my side was a Muslim officer. He said, we were Jew and Muslim and Christian. We were white, black, Latino, and Asian. We ran to help people we didn't know, and we didn't care what they looked like. We ran towards danger because that's who we are." He said, "I thought you should know that. I think people should know that." And then he sat down. That is the true heart of American law enforcement. We are flawed. We must and we will work to get better. But we are good people from all walks of life who have chosen service over self. I know that. I think all of America has to know that. When I speak to young people, I try to give them what may seem like an odd perspective. I tell kids that because life is filled with striving and stresses, with the need for money and the desire for recognition, all of which may obscure what really matters, I suggest to them that they do something that seems weird. I tell them, close your eyes, even though you're a teenager or a college student, close your eyes and imagine yourself at the end of your life. I hope you're old and gray. Close your eyes, your life is about to end. Look back on the life you just lived and ask one question. Who do I want to have been? Who do I want to have been? And I tell them, because if you ask it that way, the things that obscure meaning are blown away. Houses, cars, money, human honor, plaques on the wall, who cares? What really matters will come into view. And I frame it that way for them because I hope that some of them will answer the question as people in law enforcement have. You want to have been people who used what you had to help people who needed you, the bullied, the picked on, the weak, the vulnerable, the frightened. That's who you have decided to have been, and that's who you will have been. We must ensure that people of talent in this country continue to understand that only in a life like that is there real value and real wealth. So we need to lead well. We need to collect actual, accurate, and complete information about policing in this country so that we have informed debates about things that matter enormously. We need to show people the true heart of law enforcement, and we need to close the chasm. If we do those things, and if we do them well, we will save lives. And we will ensure that other great men and women follow into this frustrating, exhausting, dangerous, and wonderful career. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the lives you shape and the lives you save. Thank you for choosing to do good for a living. May you do it as long as ever you can. Thanks for listening to me.